Hey guys, what's up? How are things on the other side of the universe? Oh shoot, hang on. Come on, work. Why is it not working? Hang on, technical difficulties, please stand by. As usual, we have technical difficulties. Hey Kay, that is a silly question to ask. Why? Hang on, guys, hang on. Really? Let's try this. No, that's the red text. We don't want that. Oh my god, I just got this working. Hang on, guys, hang on. I want the chat on this one for this, because this is a discussion. At least that's the intention. You know what? Hang on. Let's just skip over here for a second. And do it this way. There. We'll just do it this way. This will work. It's cheating, but it'll work. As long as the chat channel actually functions. Come on, plug in, don't let me down. Ah, there we go. Okay, we have chat. God. I swear to God, that chat plugin gives me so many problems. And I know you guys all wanted me to be bald again, so I figure this is as close to that as we're going to get. So what's up, guys? Alright. For those of you catching this on YouTube, I want to make this fundamentally clear. And for those of you on stream right now, I want to make this fundamentally clear. This is a nice big warning that we are going to be talking about spoilers, okay? We are going to be talking about Episode 7 without any reins on, without any hesitation on, without any pulling back, okay? If you still have not seen the movie and would like to walk in blind, now is your time to either close the stream or close the video. Okay? This is your final warning. Nice, big, obvious. Okay? I don't know how to be any more blatant about this than I am currently being. Alright, you now have had the option to close the stream or close the movie or whatever. I'm going to give it a couple more seconds just in case, just to make sure, because I really don't want anyone to be like, oh god, and accidentally, you know, or didn't get to the computer in time or whatever. Alright, I think that's a sufficient wait. Fun fact, I spent like 30 minutes trying to figure out a good series of songs to play in the background, because that whole copyright issue is so bad right now that I actually had to be really specific about what kind of song I could be playing in the background without having issue. I was originally wanting to have some kind of Star Wars-y music in the background, but other than MIDI music from TIE Fighter, I basically couldn't, and that sucked. Let me get my opinion overall as an aggregate out there really quick, okay? I loved the movie. I absolutely loved it. While I can, and indeed will, nitpick issues about it, and there are certain things in the plot that have some problems, those are a tiny, tiny issue compared to how freaking awesome that film was. That was genuinely good. And the funny thing was, I didn't think it was going to be. I really didn't. I walked in there, and I saw the first, 10 minutes or so, maybe less than that. Maybe like 5 minutes. It might have been about 10 minutes. And I was just like, damn, this is not, it's not going to be that good. It's going to be alright. It's not going to be bad, but it's not going to be that good. Because the first 10 minutes felt very, very Abrams. You know what I mean? Maybe you don't. But when you get used to really analyzing movies, I'm sure some of you picked up on this regardless, it very much felt like Star Trek 2009, to use it directly, you know? It felt like his style of just sort of, lots of action, lots of energy, but nothing Star Wars in there, not bad, but not Star Wars. And so I'm staring at like, ugh. I can't tell the exact moment, this is bothering me, I can't tell the exact moment at which it felt like a Star Wars film, but there was a definitive point at which I was like, okay, this is actually a lot better. Holy crap. I am astonished by this. So I could go, I've been debating the exact format to do this, because I have a lot of mental thoughts about the movie in general. I'm playing WoW in the background right now to help me concentrate, to help keep my thoughts focused, because that always helps me focus for some weird reason. But it looks like a lot of people in chat enjoyed the movie as well, which is great. Kamek wants to know, could I rank it versus the other 6? I would say I've only seen it once, and I refuse to actually rank a movie having only seen it once. It's true with games as well. However, at the very, very least, I would say it is equal to 3, possibly more so. It might actually be, it might actually be more, better than 3. I can't decide that yet, because I've seen 3 like 20 times, and I've seen 7 once. So let's get the obvious complaint out of the way. It's the complaint I've heard most, and it's also, something that is worth considering, and that is, it has a lot of deliberate parallels to A New Hope. The structure, the overall structure, between this movie and A New Hope was very, very similar. And it's also worth noting that the plot of this particular movie was not its strongest point. However, I would immediately point out that that is also true with A New Hope itself. But it feels more like, if I was to put it into term, it feels like a proper remake of A New Hope, if you know what I mean. Same concept, same ideas, same feel, same overall arcs, but very well presented, arguably better presented. Now, of course it's going to be better presented the times, but I will say this. The Starkiller made me feel more horrible, more disgusted than the Death Star ever did. And I've read the EU. I know exactly how bad the Death Star is. That weapon they devised, they managed to do a lot of really good things with it. Abrams is... I've said this before. People always make fun of me for this. I talked about this when I was doing the Star Wars look-ats I guess like a year ago now. Abrams is actually a very good director. He's just very good in his specific field. And one of the things he's very good at is visual scope and visual storytelling. He's really well done. He knows how to do that. And it shines everywhere in this film. Even the more obvious stuff was still well done. But the thing that I want to mention, like, literally first is the destruction of the planet where the Republic Senate was on. That scene was chilling, because it's not just we actually see it. We actually see that blast of light soaring through hyperspace. We actually see it covering the horizon as they're on the planet that is firing it. We actually see them on the target world, watching it slowly engulf everything until there's nothing left in the sky. That made me feel sick to my stomach. I mean, that was just holy crap. That was brilliant, brilliant directing. Absolutely brilliant. Loved that. There's a lot of more obvious visual storytelling moments they do, but again, very well done obvious storytelling moments. For example, some people, I mean, everyone caught on to the blue and the red the blue and the red lighting on Ren's face, but very few people can actually understand how much effort was put into setting that up. They specifically designed the setting, the theme, I'm saying the wrong. They arranged the pieces of the story such that that scene could happen, so that that scene could happen. They set it up so that it has to suck the power out of the sun. They set it up so that they would have the sun going around as a ticking clock. They set it up so that they would be present there on the planet when it happens, so that there would be the fading light, so you could see the red from the device on the left, right side of his face, and the blue from the sun on the left side of his face. And then the blue fades when he makes his choice. That's relevant. That's actually pretty awesome, because it shows the lengths to which they were willing to go in order to emphasize the thing that I feel this movie did best, and that's character. That's probably one of the reasons why I really, really, really like this film. It oozed character everywhere. Everything was always about the individuals. The scope and scale of the conflict, despite everything I just talked about with that awesome, awesome scene, was really in the background. This was all about Finn all about Chewbacca, all about BD, all about Leia, all about Han, all about Ren, all about Rey. You know, it literally was all focused on the characters and just a little bit of establishment so you know where we are. So you know exactly the point in which the story was in. And I loved that. I loved the heavy, heavy emphasis on character. Oh my gosh. I could actually go down the list scene by scene. Like, speaking as a film geek, Abrams really... I shouldn't just give him credit. Everyone involved really pulled out all the stops. They really were like, okay, full tilt. Genuine cinematography, great camera work, amazing lighting work, wonderful set design, wonderful background design. Every single aspect of the film, amazing costume design, amazing work from the music. Huge props to John Williams for actually doing even better than I've heard him do before. Every single tiny little aspect of the movie was just phenomenal. Now, as I mentioned, there are a few nitpicks, and like I said, most of those could all be summarized by a single sentence, which I'm going to mention right now. A lot of plot points existed solely to push forward the story or to push forward character moment. In other words, there are quite a few... yeah, John Williams did the music. There are quite a few moments when the... basically, something would happen for no reason other than to advance the plot, which is, and I've said this before, and I'm just going to be honest about it, it is bad writing. However, I'm also going to be honest about the fact that I don't mind bad writing, and I've talked about this a dozen times, if you're going to do something with that bad writing, if there's some purpose that you're trying to accomplish with that writing. So, pretty much every time there was a plot hole or a flaw in the script, in terms of its structure, it was there specifically to push forward the plot. And it did happen several times. I thought about keeping track, but basically, there's like 5 or 6 times throughout the movie where it's just, and then here's, this needs to happen because plot, or this needs to happen because character. Good example, the fact that they when they're landing on the village right at the beginning, they completely ignore the extremely obvious Z-Wing, or whatever they're called in this movie. You know, the X-Wing wannabe. Just sitting right over there, like 20 feet from the landing pad. Probably the biggest, the most egregious example of something happening because plot is R2 waking up. You know, R2 just is, all of a sudden he wakes up because this is the point in the movie where we need to go and find Luke. And while that can be explained, as all plot holes can be explained, not even an attempt was made to explain it within the film. It was just, yep, and then R2's back up. So, yeah. But again, I'm not actually bashing the film. I'm just trying to speak as fairly as I can. If there was a flaw in the movie, for me, personally, that would be the biggest flaw. The fact that the writing took a backdoor in terms of plot construction for the sake of writing in the terms of character and character construction and story development and all that fun kind of stuff. One of the things I've heard is that R2 is actually Force sensitive, which... considering the fact that the EU is not being taken into account when it comes to this, for the most part, we'll talk about that too, is possible, since it is only in the EU that droids were actually anti-Force. So they may decide to flip that around on us and make that actually make a degree of sense. And yeah, the fact that Poe just managed to escape Jakku without any worrying authority, you know, like I said, there's about 5 or 6 different scenes where it's just like, huh? But again, I'm okay with all of it. And you know why I'm okay with all of it? Because the characters were amazing! Every single one of the new characters did exactly what they needed to do. They were likable, they were lovable, they were brilliantly acted. Finn was just freaking incredible. Someone just asked what are my 3 favorite characters. I don't know about the other 2, but Finn is automatically at the top of that list. He perfectly portrayed the completely scared, brainwashed stormtrooper who is tired of this stuff, but he's so human and so wonderfully flawed, and yet he's still a great person. It's just, oh my god, Finn was incredible. Finn was absolutely incredible. Poe was incredible. The scene where they're escaping from the Star Destroyer, I used to know the name of it. The scene where they're escaping from the Star Destroyer. And then they're just like, oh yeah, this is great. The automatic chemistry between those two was incredible, and I think it's because this is just me speculating, but there's so much actual chemistry between the actors that I feel like they just took that and ran with it. You know, they just really pushed the friendship between those two. Bam, boom. Ray was brilliant. She came across as just a little bit, the initial part of the movie, she came across a little bit as too much of a, I hesitate to use the term Mary Sue, because I don't mean that, but, you know, just it's a little bit too good. And then it became pretty clear pretty quickly that she was just flying by the seat of her pants the entire time. Also, there were lots and lots of hints why exactly she is the way she is. And, of course, that question has been left unanswered. So we only have speculation in order to determine, you know, who she is, why she is. I mean, I can't just escape anyone's attention that she was astonishingly force-sensitive for being someone who has never been trained. However, that is also not inconsistent. With the EU and the AU, there are plenty of people in the past who have been that good just naturally because they have that sensitivity within them. And of course, she's someone who probably has something in her past that's helping her out with that. At least that's my thought on it. What did I say, Jaina? Did I actually say that out loud? Yeah, by the way, me and my sister both agree that she's probably Ben's sister. I'm just going to say that flat out. Wait, Poe's in Rogue One? Awesome. Anyways, and yeah, the parallels between Jason and Jaina are pretty awesome. Okay. Well, I do think that, yeah, it was literally the first thing that was, I mean, we're sitting there and it's like, yeah, that's Jaina. Now, someone mentioned that she might have been mind-whopped. In fact, it looks like Chaos Rider just mentioned that just now. They were mentioning that in chat earlier. If that's true, let me make this clear. I think if that's true, I think they did that to protect her from Snoke. Oh, let's talk about Snoke while we're on the subject. So, Snoke's awesome. I know some people don't care for him, and I understand why. He is very CGI in a movie that actually has a surprisingly small amount of CGI. But, he's everything he should be for the situation that the movie's in my opinion. He is... it basically feels as if Palpatine was actually in A New Hope as that kind of overseeing figure, which obviously he wasn't. Yeah, Solo can't get away from those Sith children. There we go. Yeah, we know nothing of Snoke's motivations. We know nothing of Rey's motivations. We know nothing of who Snoke is or where he came from or anything like that. I have heard two theories. I shouldn't say it that way. I have heard one theory, literally just one, and then I have my own theory, which I've never heard anyone else say, which I find interesting whenever that happens. So let me share the theory that everyone said. It's Palpatine. It is Palpatine survived either through clone hopping or through the just the fact that he actually lived through the explosion or something, and that's who it is, and it's Palpatine at the end. As you could probably tell from my tone here, I don't actually buy that. I would like to give some real quick props to Andy Serkis for somehow doing a good job of playing someone who wasn't a gorilla or a golem. I kid. He's actually quite talented gentleman. But, yeah, I don't think it's actually him. According to the AU stuff, Malachira, Snoke is about 7 feet tall. So he's not that huge, but he is big. I guess I have heard the It's Plagueis theory, but I've only heard that once, and it was said as a joke, so I didn't take it seriously. So, here's my theory about Snoke. It's VII. I'm going to wait to see how many of my audience know who that is. So, we know that, yeah, wouldn't it, Baronessa, wouldn't it? He is the bad guy from the Tours. pretty much the villain of all of the Tor series. KOTOR, KOTOR 2, and Tor. He is the bad guy. You say that, Vect, but Tor is canon! It is the only thing from the EU that has been pulled forward. Rakata is a thing in the AU. The Rakatan people, the ancient empire, that is actually pulled forward into the AU. That is a thing. In fact, I would put this down at like a 90% possibility that the planet that Luke actually landed on in the end is Rakata Prime, or whatever the name of the world is. The world we go to in KOTOR 1. Tell me you couldn't see that parallel. He went back to find the ancient Jedi temples, and he finds that. Now, I was going to say, if it's Tython, I don't think it's Tython. I mean, I guess it could be Tython, but that's, obviously, I just said what I think it is. Anyways, moving along. So, yeah, VII. He's either been in behind things this whole time. I mean, we know, these are the things we know about Snoke. He has some capacity over the dark side, you know, so he is a Force user. We do know that. He does have, he is old, very old, as in the idea that he should be older than, like, well, anything, really. But they don't specify, they just say that he's very old. He is also someone who could pretty much automatically benefit from a diseased and poisoned galaxy, which is the other thing I'll talk about in a minute here. Also, I would really be remiss if I didn't point out that the Starkiller weapon seems very similar to one of the Rakatan weapons. And of course, he has that huge gash on his face and a few other things. Yeah, so, bottom line, I think he is actually VII, and he has either been biding his time, or, and I kind of don't like this idea, but it's possible, he has been manipulating things this entire time, like he was behind Bane. I could see them saying he was behind Bane, he was behind Plagueis, he was behind Palpatine, you know, I could see them trying to pull that kind of a thing with him. Or, again, he was just biding his time this entire time for a moment in which he could reemerge and function. Given how VII maintains his existence, the reason that he keeps going that long is because he consumes life energy from the dead, right? And there are several instances in Star Wars where he could have just been quietly eating in the background. So, anyways, just food for thought. It is also entirely possible that he's just a guy who we've never heard of before and has no connection to the old Star Wars at all. That is within the realm of possibility. I don't think that's true, though. Everything that they've been doing, one way or another, has been tying in the old while starting the new. So there has to be some connection to the old. So even if he's not Vishay, even if he's not Palpatine, there is some connection between Snoke and everything that happened before. We just don't know what it is yet. I will say that I like that there is so little information on him. That is exactly what it should be. And someone in chat pointed this out. Remember how much we knew about Palpatine in episode 5? We knew nothing about Palpatine in episode 5. We knew that there was a guy, and he was the Emperor, and Vader was terrified of him and immediately obeyed him. And that's basically it. That's all we knew. We didn't even know his name was Palpatine until the books came out. So, admittedly, I haven't gone all the way through Knights of the Fallen Empire yet, not counting the one thing which I already know about. Anyways, point being, so yeah, we know basically nothing about Snoke, and I think that's a good thing. I do think that was a correct choice on their end. Ignoring Snoke, there's a couple other characters I want to talk about before we get to the one I really want to talk about. BD-8, they did a brilliant job with BD-8. It would have been very easy for them to just ape R2-D2 with him. It would have been very, very easy for them to just make him a cute, gimmicky toy, like an Ewok or something like that. And they did none of that. They actually made him very emotive. Whoever was on the controls for that guy did a great job. And he was just... I don't even have words for it. He was brilliant. The little lighter thumbs up thing. Oh my god. You should have heard the audience in my theater when that happened. There was just collective... Oh! And the way he was like... And him going down the stairs in the background, you know, one stair at a time, very carefully, very patiently. and again, surprisingly emotive for a creature who only his ability to emote was the head bob. But and yet several times you could see those emotions like or or you could actually get emotion out of a freaking out of a droid like that. And again, props to them for really doing a good job. Also, I'd just like to say this. Oh yeah, the grappling hooks. I'll talk about that in a second. BD-8, the fact that they didn't make him CGI was the best choice they could have possibly made there. The fact that he's actually a physical object that they can interact with, just like R2 was brilliant, and really, I feel, adds to him. I could just say that, in general, their lack of reliance on CGI served them well. There was certainly some CGI. There had to be for a film of this scope, for that scale thing I talked about earlier. But nevertheless, the fact that so much of so many of the scenes were actual sets, so many of the places they were at actually had the design and the costume and the actual physical objects they were interacting with. I will say this, every now and again, when there was a heavily CGI scene, you could tell, and that was a little bit odd. But I don't feel it detracted from it. It just was a little bit of a, oh, hey, and now here's a scene where there's CGI, The other thing, but yeah, the grappling hooks was also great. Just in general, because it adds to his ability to function. Really, Samurai? Oh, man. My theater was boisterous. In a good way, in a good way. There's lots of shared enthusiasm that day. I was talking about something. Right. The great scene where he's rolling around in the Falcon. It's like, wah, wah, and then, like, after the third, he's like, okay, I'm sick of this, and just puts out the grappling hooks and just tethers himself there in space as they're like, wah. I did notice that Liberated. In fact, I have some thoughts about the First Order, which I'll share in just a moment. Yeah, so far every audience I've seen, because this is talking about friends and family, has been quite receptive, which is good. As I've always said, it's one of the things I like about seeing a movie in the theaters, is that shared enthusiasm thing, which just adds to the moment. Anyways, okay, what else we got? C-3PO was perfect. I know he was basically a cameo, but he was perfect. He was absolutely what he should have been. That moment where he was like, I miss you, my dear old friend. I was just like, yes, that is exactly what 3PO should have been in Episode 2. And I know that's a weird comparison, but I literally just watched Episode 1, 2, and 3, like, the day prior. Yeah, the idea of 3PO being this goofy, ridiculous, comic-y, just pun storm, this non-stop pun storm from 3PO in Episode 2 was a little bit much. The much more toned down, much more heartwarming moments 3PO had, I feel, fit him a lot better. I also really like the fact that they bothered to toss in a lot of things that you can figure out for yourself. For example, you get the impression the entire time that Ren, who I haven't talked about yet, is very, very untrained. Like, there's absolutely no skill to him whatsoever. There's no actual knowledge or experience or anything. But they mentioned that, like, on purpose. And there's a few lines, like Han's line about what Snoke is doing with him, and his Snoke's own final line to, the Tarkin wannabe. I shouldn't say that. I'll talk about him in a bit. All of it indicates the fact that Snoke managed to convince Ren to go to the dark side. However, did not actually bother to train him in the dark side. Ren... Well, I don't want to talk about him yet. I don't want to talk about it, but I like that implication there. There are a few other implications as well. Another good example, they only say Ren's name once in the entire film, which was actually really awesome. There we go. That one scene where he's just walking and he's like, Ben! I've been hesitating to talk about that. Let's move on. Let's not talk about that scene. The implication of the political situation. Very, very little time was spent on establishing the setting. We do know a decent amount based on what they imply, but again, they didn't spend any big exposition scenes. And I hate to say this, but I do actually think that was a good thing. I think it was a good move for them to not just sit down and be like, the Trade Federation was... They were obviously deliberately avoiding that in order to avoid prequel parallels. But we do get bits and pieces of it. For example, let me make this clear. I don't think the Republic is defeated. Okay? Let's make that fundamentally clear. You can't wipe out a galactic organization by taking out a planet. What you can do is basically make that galactic organization defunct. Again, try to think of what would happen to, I don't know, the Galactic Empire or the Old Republic or any other organization if their headquarters was wiped out without warning and every single one of their leaderships and the bureaucracy that ran that organization was wiped out. My point is there is still a republic out there. It just no longer has a head. You know, it no longer has the organization that an organization usually needs. And I think that was a good move on their part. Chopping the head off the beast, so to I mean the writer's head, because that way there is still a republic to help resist the First Order. However, they are still very, very much hampered in that, so they are going to be fighting from behind, basically. There we go. I also like the very quiet implications that the Republic has been in a political standstill with the First Order for some time, while clandestinely supporting the Resistance, or whatever the hell they were calling it, you know, the New Rebellion. That implies some hidden shadings to the politics behind the scenes, which I could speculate on endlessly. Excuse me, but yeah, I'm not gonna go too much into that. I'm just gonna leave that thought there. And yeah, they didn't just... You're right, they didn't just wipe out one planet, they wiped out like 5. They basically wiped out the system. Oh, by the way, for those of you not aware, Abrams originally wanted to do that to Coruscant, and he was told no. That's why they invented a new system for this place. I don't even remember the name of it. It started with an H. It's like Horatiadia or something like that, I don't know. But anyways, yeah, so fun fact, Abrams originally wanted to wipe out Coruscant. I mention that because if you pay attention to that scene, it looks a hell of a lot like Coruscant. In fact, that was my instinctual reaction, was, oh my god, they just destroyed Coruscant. And then I didn't put that together until later, like, oh, right, yeah, no, they didn't. Yep. Let's harvest the sun. I will say that, overall, I like the new super weapon. I still wish it didn't exist. I do. I do think that the super weapon should not exist. And my reasons why is the same reason why I'm tired of super weapons in general. I'm tired of super weapons in general. I really wish they would just stop having super weapons in Star Wars. I didn't even see your theory. I'm sorry, chatter. Chat's going by really quick right now. So, yeah, I'm sick of super weapons in general. But at least this super weapon was very impressive. I actually already started with that, so I don't have anything new to add to that. They really did a good idea with it. I could see that, chatter. I acknowledge your theory. Oh, sorry. Actually, yeah, I wanted that for some time myself, okay. Let's see. Do I think Finn will become a Source user? I hope not. I genuinely hope not. Yeah. Let's see, what else do we have to talk about? Probably Pwaka. Let's talk about... I've already talked about how awesome Finn is. I do want to add one other thing. Finn is great for one big reason. Finn is great for the same reason that... Oh, shoot, what's his name? Hang on, I gotta look up his name. This is important. Just a second. Hang on. Sorry, I'm looking up the name of a character. Maritza. Okay. Bear with me. Finn was important for the same reason Maritza was important to Star Trek. Okay? Now, most of you will probably be like, who the hell is Maritza? Maritza is a file clerk, a Cardassian file clerk in Deep Space Nine, in the episode Duet. If you've not seen the episode Duet, just mute me for like a minute, because this is kind of a spoiler, and it's also one of my favorite DS9 episodes. You ready? Okay. The reason he was so amazing was he was someone who was a Cardassian during the occupation who was tormented by it, who his mind, his sanity was destroyed by the horrible things that were happening in the occupation around him. And the whole episode was just all about how incredibly terrible the Cardassian Union had actually been, not just to the people they abused, but to their own people. The idea was there that Gul Marset was this kind of tyrant, this kind of horrible, disgusting, depraved Cardassian, pretty much because of the same reason that Marset was insane, because the Union, the organization, forced him to do terrible things. The organization forced them to do these deplorable acts, and everyone reacted differently, but they were all victims. They were all victims of that same thing. It's been referred to as the great crime of the Cardassian Union. Or what? Sorry, not Marset. Sorry, wrong name. Whatever. I don't care about the names. Point being, that's how I feel with Finn. With Finn, we see how bad the First Order is from a personal perspective. We see what the First Order does to its own people. What is the very first thing we see of Finn? Him seeing one of his own soldiers die and streak that blood on his face, which does two great things right off the bat. First of all, it humanizes both of them. It humanizes the dying soldier, whose face we never even see, and it humanizes Finn. And of course, hell, if I could be blunt, it humanizes stormtroopers in general, which is a feat, by the way. There's a reason they wear those damn masks. And, by the way, those masks, they have to keep them on in lore! That wonderful line from Captain Twitchface, I can't remember her name, that horrible, horrible line where she's like, "Did I give you permission to remove your mask?" That one line spoke volumes of how the First Order functions, and how those people, even within their own organization, are treated as less than droids. So humanizing them like that, whoa, hang on, we've run out of music. Let's go down to my other selection of music here. And so we see his complete freakout over that was perfect. And yeah, and what's the very next thing that happens? He has ordered to kill innocent civilians for what amounts to no reason. Holy crap. And what's even further better about that is the fact that that was his first battle. He actually mentions that was his very first battle later on, and that just further adds to it. Alright, you are now trained as a stormtrooper, you've been brainwashed since birth, doesn't even know his family, does not even have a name until Poe gives him one. He just has a freaking designation. All of this just speaks to exactly what the First Order does, and why it is such a hideously evil organization. If I could be so bold, I think that the First Order might actually be the single most evil organization we've seen in Star Wars, and that is seriously saying something. This is an organization Tarkin would have been proud of. Which brings me to my next point, the First Order. So, the First Order clearly recruits young, and that actually makes tons of sense, because most of the old are freaking dead. Most of the old died in the purge of the Galactic Empire. And yeah, the fact that he looked at him before he boarded the ship was a really nice touch, by the way. You could kind of, because the parallels between the parallels between Ren and his great thing that he's going through, and Finn in that moment were very strong. Yeah, the speech that General Hux gave, my first thought was it was a little over the top, but then he kept going, and then he kept going, and there was such, I don't know what word to use for this. There was such enthusiasm in his word about murdering trillions. There was such force, there was such charisma in him that I just started to realize the full depths of the depravity of what the First Order was. See, here's what the First Order is. You ready for this? This is very simple. The First Order is consistent of people who looked at the Galactic Empire as a model. No, I'm sorry, I'm saying this wrong. Who looked at Tarkin as a model. Who looked at that and said, yes, that is how things should be. The people in charge of the First Order were the people who looked at that and said, yes, this is right. And they believe it with such sincerity and such passion. These people, I mean, I know everyone has always compared the Galactic Empire to the Nazis, and there's some decent parallels there, but as the EU has shown many, many times, there was plenty of non-Nazi things there. There was plenty of good the Galactic Empire did. There were plenty of people there who genuinely cared about people. You know, this has been going back all the way back to the Thrawn trilogy. The First Order, by contrast, very clearly, no. The First Order is not here to better the galaxy in any way. The First Order is not here to bring order to the galaxy. The First Order is here. Well, as weird as this sounds, I want to parallel this to a Twilight Zone episode. Forgive me for not knowing the name of the episode, but it's a brilliant episode. It's one of my favorite Twilight Zone episodes. It's an episode set in the future where there's this new organization called the State, and they're sentencing a man to death because he's a librarian, and books have no purpose in the new order of the organization. And there's this wonderful speech the Chancellor gives about how, not Stalin and Hitler and all those other horrible people, they didn't go too far enough. We must purge the weak. We must purge everything. We must wipe out everything. Yeah. I'm forgive me for not knowing the name of the episode. It's a good episode. You should look into it. But that's the feel I get from the First Order. We are no longer interested in actually bettering the galaxy. We are interested in order at any cost. And any cost. Oh my God! The fact that they're willing to pull what is something that would make Malik go, well, hang on a second, there, guys. I mean, Malik probably would be willing to use a weapon like that if given means to. So I know I don't want to try and humanize Malik or anything like that, but even Malik never accomplished that level of just stupid evil. Wiping out a star system and everything in it is ridiculously stupid evil. There is no denying this fact. No matter what your gains are, you have just fundamentally altered your galaxy on a scale that you can't even comprehend. You're wrong. That's ignoring the obvious moral implications of wiping out billions or more of people. Holy crap. So yeah, the First Order is very much neo-Nazis in the sense that they are more Nazis, more the Empire. Take all of the worst aspects, take all of the worst concepts of the Tarkin Doctrine, take all of the most severe concepts of the rule through fear, and crank it up. Just push it up to a new perspective, a new degree of extreme, and that is the First Order. And yeah, Hux's speech drives that home so hard. Any gains from wiping out a star system? No. Even on an extremely long-term side of the thing, it's a side of perspective, the only possible gains from that would have happened naturally anyways. In other words, the redistribution of iron into the rest of the galaxy, and that's only through something like a supernova. Wiping out a star system, which they didn't actually, like, wipe out, if you'll pay attention, they didn't wipe out the system, they just wiped out several of the planets. So, yeah, no, literally no benefit to that. No positive resultant from that whatsoever, even on a galactic scale. It does, Chemic. That would actually make that true. And that's why I said I wouldn't like that. But there's almost no way that they can't tie Snoke into Palpatine somehow. I mean, even if he is just like the other apprentice of Plagueis or whatever, or if he is Plagueis, there's going to be some way he's tied into Palpatine. I put money on that down. And yes, I did see that Chaos Rider, which amused me. Yeah, it was brilliantly chilling. Like I said, that whole scene, the speech, the firing of the weapon, the destruction of the H planet, whose name I still don't remember, that made me feel sick. Like legitimately made me just sitting there in the theater just feel queasy. I mean that is a good thing, as weird as that sounds. It was very, very powerful, very, very impacting. Snoke is 7 feet tall. That's actually been confirmed. And the other thing that I found interesting about the Star Killer, yes, it was basically the Death Star. Abrams himself has actually commented on it. He's like, imagine if they said, looked at the Death Star and said, you know, in character, said, we want another of those, but it's been 30 years, so what can we do technologically to advance that? And that's basically what Abrams and the writers told oh, I forget the title. The people who design the things. I know that's really vague, but the people who actually design the concepts, the weapons, the aesthetics of all these things, and they went to them and were like, look, imagine the Death Star after 30 years of technological progression, and then they got the Star Killer out of that. So, what is that term called? Art director? Is that what I'm thinking of? Art director? Yeah. Anyways, that is one of those plot holes I mentioned earlier, Dark Octagon. They never actually explain how the thing moves. There is the assumption that it moves, but we don't actually know for certainty. What else? The fact that Rey was being... there's so many little points. I could literally go through scene by scene and just explain all the little things they did great. There was so much good directing and cinematography on display there. The rations thing. This is worth 1/2. This is worth 1/4. I'll give you 60 portions for the droid. That's just... whew. Yeah, that's a good point. It would have to move. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it moves. It's just they never bothered to explain any of that. There was very little exposition in this film. Yeah, the scavengers and their general desperate air, the showcasing of how she eats every day, the mere fact that they pay these scavengers in food is just what? Yes, Bronboa. Yeah, it literally consumes a star to fire. Oh, by the way, that's another way in which that weapon is horrible. In addition to wiping out billions of lives, it also consumes a star to do it. But that is very much the First Order in general. We do not care what cost there is in order to accomplish our ends. There is no such thing as too far of an extreme. Yeah, the fact that her home was a salvaged AT-AT. I mentioned the scale thing earlier. One other thing I like about that, with regards to the Star Killer, they did a great job of that. But another thing they did is they really made the Star Destroyers feel as massive as they should have been. If you know what I mean. When we actually see what a Star Destroyer is like from the perspective of a person walking in front of it, or whatever. And the AT-ATs was another good example of that. That was actually really, really awesome that they showcased that. Yeah, basically Mandartin, yes. I could also comment on the physics of the fact that the Star Killer is consumed to make a new star when it destroys in the end there, but we're not going to go into that. Actually, I do think it is Bronboa, but my chat appears to disagree with me, which I don't mind. I'm down with that. This is a discussion, not me telling you what's what. We haven't talked about Rey yet. We haven't talked about Rey, and we haven't talked about Ren. I want to save those for last. Chewie... I was almost disappointed by how little of a role he had in the movie until he did the exactly right thing. There was a scene where, if you're worried about spoilers now, then you're like, when Han dies. The scene when Han dies, first of all, was perfect, but I don't want to talk about that, like, right now. What I want to talk about is the fact that in that scene, Chewie doesn't, like, do any of the stupid things that he could have done and usually happen in fiction. Instead, he picks up his bowcaster and shoots Ren right in the gut. And my first reaction to that was, yes, because that is exactly right. And then he just goes full on berserker, wipes out every single one of the other stormtroopers present, and then detonates the bomb. That was exactly correct. That was exactly what Chewie should have done in that scene. So while Chewie was basically a cameo, his presence for that scene alone was worth it. Speaking of which, I feel like Carrie Fisher performed phenomenally as the aged and tired Leia Solo, I should say. And I don't have much else to add to her, but every scene she was in was just... the feeling I got from her was that weight that it should be. She very much felt like she had slipped into Mon Mothma's role in the EU. For those of you who have not read into or whatever the EU, Mon Mothma was very much the aged, wise leader who was very tired and worn down by her charge, reluctantly accepting the task of being the leader, that kind of a thing. Great job with Carrie Fisher. Absolutely phenomenal. And yeah, the fact that injury was relevant. I'm sorry, someone mentioned earlier, and I want to re-talk about this. Ren continuing to beat his own wound. I want to talk more about that later, but that was significant as well. The pain that gave him the additional focus, to give him the additional power. because Darkseid is all about that kind of thing. In order to wield the Darkseid, you need that kind of negative focus or strong emotional focus, and he was cheating basically to give himself that focus, and it wasn't enough. But we'll get to that later. I have no idea if she's Leia Solo or Leia Organa, and I don't care. By the way, just a bit of a warning, guys. Don't really pay too much attention to the Star Wars Wiki, Wikipedia right now. It's very much a mess. There's a lot of people trying to organize it into something a little bit more coherent. I've actually looked into this myself a bit, because I noticed a few discrepancies. Basically, they're trying to separate Wikipedia into the full-on Legacy and AU sections, and they haven't done that yet. So there's a lot of EU information on AU pages and vice versa, and they're still trying to get that organized, so just a bit of a warning on that for the next however long it takes them to get that all resolved. So yeah, Leia was perfect. I already talked about R2-D2 and 3PO. Again, cameos, but perfect. Exactly what they should have been. I said this before, and I've said this again. This movie should have been the passing of the torch. And it really did feel like that. In basically every way, it was the old making way for the new. I was a little surprised that only Han was the one to die. If you guys remember from my prediction forever ago, I actually predicted more than a few people would die, and Han was one of those. I ended up being wrong about that. In fact, the only one who dies is Han. Everyone else is still functional and active. Yeah, Luke has not passed the torch. Luke was barely in the film, although that was... I completely called that as well. We all did. We all knew. You know, the moment he wasn't on the poster, it's like, okay, yeah, Luke's not... There's something going on with Luke, and he's probably not in this. Yeah, Harrison Ford, I haven't talked about him yet, but Harrison Ford, again, pretty much did the right exact thing he should have done. And it's actually kind of funny because he's... I mean, in many ways he feels like the Obi-Wan, but at the same time, he wasn't perfect, if that makes any sense. He kept screwing up, you know what I mean? He kept making mistakes, he kept having difficulties, you know, with certain scenes or dealing with certain situations, and he kept being saved by other people. So, yeah, Solo felt like a flawed Obi-Wan, as opposed to the, you know, wizened, completely on top of the situation Obi-Wan, and I liked that. I'm going to hesitate on talking about his death for a little bit longer, because I want to tie that into the discussion of Ren, and he's the one I want to talk about last. So, just holding off on Ren for a moment. The fact that Luke had no lines, as weird as this sounds, is something I agree with. I was actually literally thinking in my mind as the movie was, you know, concluding, like, oh god, they're going to end it here, and I felt like they shouldn't. I felt like they should keep it going until we have that literal scene with Luke, and then we cut to Luke, and then here's the lightsaber, bam, that was the end. That was awesome. I liked that. Luke, Mark Hamill, of course, is amazing. I'm not too worried about Mark Hamill because he's Mark Hamill and he's amazing. But his... he looks like he's looking at Rey. I would almost call it surprise, but I think it's more like, you know, a bit of shock at Rey's presence. Yeah, it did liberate it. Also, did you notice the grave that Luke was standing in front of? If Rey is actually Luke's daughter, that grave might... Yeah. I also did notice that Luke had a gray robe. I really, really, really hope we're going to see a formalization of the gray thing. Now that, if I can put it bluntly, now that the Force is out of Lucas's hands in this matter. You missed the grave. Yeah, there's a grave right next to where Luke was standing. He was actually basically looking down at it when she came up to him, and then, or right next to it. Excuse me, right next to it, like to his left. So yeah, if that was Mara Jade or whomever, yeah. I would be very happy if they do the gray thing, which I guess brings me to my next big point, since I'm running out of characters to talk about. I feel like the entire setting was very KOTOR 2. Let me try and explain that a little bit better. Wait, did he really? That's actually really cool, Daniel-san. Um, so, yeah, KOTOR 2. You guys were at my KOTOR lore run, right? Of course you were. Um, the entire feeling, emotion, sensation of KOTOR 2 could best be boiled down to the galaxy is wrong. There was just a fundamentally diseased, dying, broken feeling about the entire game, and the sensation was there that it wasn't just the people, and because every single character was broken in some way or another, but the entire galaxy was just plain wrong. And that is exactly what I felt about Episode 7, which is funny, by the way, because if you remember, I predicted that one, too, back during the analysis thing when we did, back for the trailer. And part of the relevant... I mean, that affects and tints just about everything I see in that, but I mention this because it wouldn't surprise me if the total imbalance in the Force, the lack of balance in the Force, I should say, is kind of what is driving this. And I mention this because I feel like if they actually do bring balance to the Force in a gray sense, it might actually help things to even out to the point where the galaxy stops being a diseased, horrible mess. When we have a situation where an organization like the First Order can exist, where a person like Snoke can rise to power and accomplish the things that he does, something is just fundamentally wrong. I'm curious if anybody else actually had that sensation from the game, from the galaxy, like I did. Like, I'm genuinely curious if that was just me, because yeah, it oozed out of every scene. Every single area just felt like. Oh, I hope so. It is possible, yes, Dakota. And I hope it is, because holy crap. Um, One thing I noticed that was really awesome. I guess I haven't talked about Rey yet, really, have I? Let's go ahead and shift this into talking about Rey. Um, First of all, they did several really good things with her. Yes, it will, Kamek. It going forward, but not going backwards. I mean, that's exactly what the EU did. It kind of ended the going forwards, and then they kept going backwards. There's plenty of holes to fill there. So yeah, Rey, I liked Rey. Let's just get that out of the way. Of the various characters, she is not my favorite, but that's just because so many other characters just completely stole the scene for me. But I will say a lot of things in favor of Rey. First of all, I do not think she was Mary Sue. I think most of what she did and was able to accomplish was significant, given the circumstances she was in. In other words, if I was to be blunt, I would say that Rey was actually very lucky. She was fighting a Dark Jedi who was extremely untrained, who was extremely unskilled and unbalanced, and just had nothing but raw power and rage, and was also wounded, I feel like pointing out. And her manipulation of the stormtrooper in the cell was perfect. She was constantly like, okay, you will... Because I love... Let's just pull this here. She's sitting there... This is great. She's sitting there like, you will come and unlock the things. Because all she's heard is these tales, these legends of the Jedi. And so she's trying to use the Force without any idea of what she's doing. So she's like, to do this... That was Daniel Craig? Oh, dude, awesome. So he comes over like, what? You will do... And this whole time she's trembling. Just a little bit. It was nicely subtle. You could see the fear in her. She's like, you will do... Whoop, 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 whoop. We've run out of music again. Let's just stop with the music. Screw it, it's not helping. So yeah, see, so she's, just a little bit trembling and just a little bit. And then she just gets really calm. And then you will unlock this. Okay. Clearly using the light side there, by the way. Clearly and distinctly using the light side in that exact moment. And then, of course, he walks away. And that last line, oh, and drop your blaster. I will drop my blaster. Clonk. I didn't fully answer this, but let me just say that I love the humor of this film. It was a little weird because this is probably, in my opinion, one of the most terrifyingly dark Star Wars films I've ever seen. Not works, there's worse than this, but definitely one of the most dark movies I've seen. And it's funny how much humor was in a movie that was so damned dark. Anyways, and you will drop your blaster, and I will drop my blaster. They did another few things to humanize her that I really liked. First of all, the fact that she goes to I forget the name of the planet where Maz was, and she's like, I never thought that anything could be so green. And she gets out and she just stands there and stands there and enjoying the green and the sun. That moment was perfect. It's so easy for us to look at Star Wars as the whole galaxy because we're the viewers. We're separate from things. We have the third-person perspective. But imagine, if you will, someone who's only ever lived on a desert planet suddenly being on a jungle planet. Imagine how different that would be. Imagine how amazing that would feel for you. I liked that they bothered to capture that moment for her. It's something that I feel like they probably should have done with Luke back in Episode 4, and obviously didn't or couldn't. But yeah, the significance of that moment was fantastic. There's a lot of little touches like that that help to flesh her out as a person, in addition to just being, you know, someone who is very innately powerful in the Force. The Maz was pretty awesome. Let me make that clear. I really liked how Maz is like giving the Obi-Wan speech basically, and like, you know, you must do this and it'll be great in the Force. And her response is, "Ah, no!" She just runs. She just flat out runs. Um, the trash compactor, that was great. Uh, General Phasma. General Phasma's confirmed to be in Episode 8, right? Because it felt like they were mostly establishing her, Hux, and Snoke. All three of them felt like characters that they were just starting to showcase. Oh, by the way, I mentioned the lack of exposition thing, but I want to add one other thing really quick before I go back to Maz. There's a few tiny notes of dialogue that help flesh out the setting a little bit more. For example, oh, good. So, good. That's excellent because that ties into what I'm about to say. Hux, if you'll remember, has this line about, basically, he wants to have clone troopers. He wants to go back to cloning troopers. And her response is, no, my soldiers are superior in every way to your clone junkies. I'm paraphrasing. But that is, there's that contest between Hux and between Phasma, and I feel like that'll pay off more in the future as we see more of the internal workings of the First Order and why exactly it is that there's those two mentalities going. Um, and that's pretty much all we have on Phasma. That's like literally all we have for her, other than the fact that she was helpful for establishing several aspects of how horrible the First Order is. But anyways. They actually had a scene where Hux rushed in. Like, okay, there's a scene where there's some captain. He basically starts to run, and they're like, "Stay at your post." He's like, "No, even Hux is left." And then we immediately cut to Hux, who is actually in the communications room talking to Snoke. And Snoke says, "Get the hell out of Dodge. Take Ren to me. We have to begin his training." Or maybe he said complete his training, but either way, it's the same thing in this case. So yeah, it would have been quite easy for them to evacuate. They had some time to do so, after all. The vision with the lightsaber. Let me just make this clear, that doesn't bother me at all. I don't think it's the lightsaber that gave her the vision. That's silly. I think it's her connecting to, well, something that has had a lot going through it. That was, in the Star Wars, it's been present that devices, that individual things that are not people, can have a lot of aura, for lack of a better word. So the lightsaber, which was Anakin's, which was Luke's, is going to have a lot of horribleness through it. And so I personally think that anybody with any significant amount of force sensitivity would probably have been able to go, "Whoa!" After that. Yeah, it's basically a relic at that point in time. Yeah, imprints. I like that. Imprints. That's a good way to put that. Hang on just a second. What else? I was talking about Maz. I don't really have much else to add to Maz. She was a great character. Um, I liked the way that she got to the heart of the matter with Finn pretty much immediately. Um, do I think Luke wanted to be found? No, absolutely not. I do not think Luke wanted to be found at all. I think Luke was more than content to sit this one out. I think Luke probably wanted. Yeah, you could hear the cries of the killed children. That was that one. I think that you could argue that Luke pretty much had decided to sit this one out for the remainder of his days. That he believed he had made things worse, and therefore it was time for him to stop interfering on a large scale. This is funny because Luke in the EU has a similar sort of revelation at a certain point about 30 years after Return of the Jedi, which turns out to have been wrong, by the way. Um, but anyways, it is possible that he was actually doing something else there. Again, it's possible that planet is Tython, since we know Tor is canon. It's possible that planet is Rakata Prime, since we know Tor is canon. So, uh, what else? I'm trying to think if there's anything I have left other than Ren and Solo and everything else. Because I kind of wanted to talk about Ren last. Anybody else have, let's just pause for a moment. Anybody else have any questions or whatnot? I have no idea how they found it. I find it amusing because nobody... In the Thrawn trilogy, they found Luke's hand. Nobody ever questioned that one. Well, since the Empire doesn't exist anymore, Caladrius, probably never. Speaking of things, okay, so I don't like one thing I didn't like was the random monster scene on Han's freighter ship. I get why it was there. It was there as a bridge scene in order to get from point A to point B, and there were certain other aspects of it that helped to establish certain character traits. But for the most part, I felt like that scene was a little unnecessary, and the monsters were a little bit ridiculous. But whatever. We've all talked. We've actually kind of already talked about Snoke. If Snoke is Plagueis, shrug. I never liked Plagueis that much, if I'm being honest. I always felt Plagueis was a stepping stool type of a villain. In other words, a villain who establishes so another villain can do. Uh, which games are now canon? The only games that are canon, to my knowledge, are KOTOR, KOTOR 2, and Tor. Do you think Han's death was mourned sufficiently? That's actually an interesting question. While we were driving to the movie, we were talking about Spock's death in episode or in Star Trek 2. Um, and one of the interesting things about Spock's death is if you ever actually go back and rewatch Star Trek 2, uh, his death, it doesn't actually take that long. There's not a lot of time spent on it. It feels like it because of the impact on it. Uh, because of the impact it has, but it's not. It's only like a total of 8 minutes, counting his death and including the funeral, and that's it. I mentioned that, though, because I felt like there was really only two ways they could have done Han's death. They could have either just really sat and had this big, death of Qui-Gon funeral, or they could have had the people who don't have time to mourn thing and just move on from it. And they kind of went with the latter there, and I kind of see why. Um, I'm not saying I necessarily agree with that. I just kind of get why they did that. Uh, why is Tor canon? Because they said so? I don't know, Last Echo. You're asking the wrong person on that one. Do I think there should have been more scenes with Phasma? Yes, just a few more at least. How easy it was to destroy the new superweapon. Actually, that makes perfect sense to me. I know that sounds weird, but superweapons should be easy to destroy under that circumstance. And you know why? Because they are hyper-specialized. Any given superweapon like that, especially like the Death Star, is something that is a huge problem of the hyper-specialization problem. Um, in other words, you are so geared towards doing one thing that you are weak in all other ways. Remember, one of the biggest flaws of the original Death Stars was they needed support in like every way in order to function. They needed fighter support. They needed tons and tons of backup in terms of capital ships and freighters and shipping and all that fun stuff. So for me, it actually makes perfect sense that a super weapon would be so easy to destroy, relatively speaking. There we go. Uh, Probably Progue. Not at my theater. We had a great audience. Is Tor worth playing? Without paying? No, no, absolutely not. I don't think the Republic had a choice. For those of you who have probably not read the in-between stuff, between Episode 6 and Episode 7, uh, the in-between stuff helps to establish how, after Palpatine's death in the AU, yeah, Arsenal Gear is another good example of that hyper-specialization problem. After Palpatine's death, there was basically a scorched earth policy that he left behind. And it really screwed up the galaxy, like a lot. And they're still basically recovering from that, even in the modern era of Episode 7 coming out. So I feel like that helps to explain a little bit why the First Order was able to rise to power so significantly. That and, the neo-Nazi thing. When you are willing to do anything, then there's a lot you can accomplish, unfortunately. Well, don't forget that they didn't actually... Well, you know what? I don't feel like getting into it. I'm not going to defend the Star Killer. I like the Star Killer. I think it makes perfect sense. I think it is natural progression of 30 years of non-stop technological innovation. I think it makes sense. If you don't agree, that's totally cool. But you're not going to you're not going to convince me that it's stupid. I'm sorry. How much is Luke to blame for the problems? That is a good question. And it depends on if my theory is right, basically, about the galaxy just being wrong and about everything just being diseased, poisoned. Like, if I was taken to flavoring words, I would say that the galaxy of Star Wars feels like the soul of the galaxy has been poisoned. And so, yeah. I do think that Luke is at least partially responsible for that, both directly and indirectly. Darth Jar Jar, not commenting on it. What else? I do think it's plausible, yes, Brombo. I do actually think it's plausible. I guarantee, I've said this before and I'll say it again, forgive me for the repetition for those of you who've been watching this whole time, but I do think there is absolute certainty that Snoke is in some way connected to the old story, to the old stuff. There's no way he's not. The entire structure of the movies has been the old connecting to the new, and the new basically taking over from the old. And let's just say that it wouldn't surprise me if... Oh, speaking of which, Ren... If Ren doesn't get redeemed, to put it as nicely as I can. Oh my god. What else? I haven't talked about Ren yet. Do I think too much was recycled? No, I don't. I guess we'll talk about Ren, because he's the only one I've got left to talk about. So, Kylo Ren, also known as Ben Solo. Everything about Ben Solo was perfect, in my opinion, and I mean that sincerely. The fact that he was wearing the mask so much of the time, he literally, pay attention to his body language and his movements, he literally acts differently when he has the mask on compared to when he takes it off. The fact that he looks so young, that he comes across as just this child when he takes off the mask, is perfect. The fact that everything about him, visually and audibly, speaks of someone who has tremendous raw power and no ability to control it, or very little, I should say, ability to control it or skill it. Even the things he does speak of far less control. For example, Darth Vader would just grab your blast, you'd shoot and he'd just block him with his hand, grab the blaster and say, "We'd be honored if you joined us." There's just that control there that Vader had. And that is very much what Vader was all about. Ren, by the other hand, just goes right in your face and literally stops the blaster bolt in midair. Along with stopping, at the same time, along with stopping Poe in the same moment. That was perfect. That was exactly right because you get the idea that he literally just shoved the Force out in raw form in like a line in front of him, just and so so the blaster shot is still there, and you notice because it stopped both the blaster shot and Poe at the same moment. So just again, it's that raw brute force mentality. His very blast. I mean, I talked about this in the trailer, but his very lightsaber looks like it is barely controlled, like it is just barely keeping the blade in one cohesive form as it's arcing and silent, moving around itself. Everything he did, I could go over every little point, but literally everything he did spoke to that, and it was some really, really good visual and audible storytelling, and basically everything about him. It was perfect. Uh, the temper tantrums he had were again perfect. The and I mean that sincerely. I don't actually. There's no negativity intended in my tone here. He's just tell me about everything. Anything else? That was exactly right. Um, Actually, I would bet money that Snoke has been deliberately not training Kylo. Uh, no, Takota. It would take no technique at all. All it would take was projecting power, nothing else. That's the point. Technique would be doing something with the bolt. Technique would be trying to have control over the bolt. But just flinging out raw stasis power doesn't require technique or skill or experience. It's just... Um, I was actually going to talk about that as well, Kay. Yes, I agree. Ren is exactly how Anakin should have felt. I got that impression so strongly. Lots and lots and lots of raw power and potential, and yet nothing reining that in, nothing keeping that in check. Um, and of course everything about his strategy is very brute force. Everything about the way he does everything is like I'm just going to rip this here, I'm just going to do this here, and it just forces his way through every situation. Now I will say, okay, so this is entering more theory. Okay, we know the Knights of Ren exist. They're mentioned extremely briefly, and they're seen in one scene in the entire movie. That is also why he calls himself Kylo Ren. This has been paralleled to the Darth thing. In other words, because in the same way that the Sith will grant you the title of Darth, you are granted the surname of Ren when you join the Knights of Ren. We don't have any information at all of what the Knights of Ren are, but I do have a theory, and it's kind of a weird one, but it's basically the theory that they're not Force users. Hear me out. The Knights of Ren, I really have nothing else to theorize on them, but I really get the strong impression that the Knights of Ren are basically just the enforcers, if you will, of Snoke's will. His top agents, his top Gestapo or whatever. And yet he wanted to he's been wanting someone who has force potential, where he could turn to the dark side and use them and use their power to actually have a dark apprentice. And Han Solo himself mentioned something about this, the fact that the supreme leader is just using you for your power. The idea that Snoke would value someone like Ben, like Kylo, specifically because of the fact that he has the ability to use the Force, let alone so powerfully. Now, it is possible the rest of the Knights of Ren can use the Force and are just very weak in it or something, but either way, it works out in that direction. What else? Oh, that would be horrible, Horatius. Possible, but horrible. I feel like I have more to talk about Ren. I love the death scene. I love Han Solo's death scene. It's... Oh my god. Okay. The fact that everything about that death scene was 100% perfect. I know I've been saying that a lot, but I mean that. Absolutely. That was one of the best scenes in the entire film. No, I think Vader's fist is the equivalent gimmick, like Samurai just said. The idea that Han goes up there, and I got this really strong impression that Han knew that it wasn't going to work. That Han knew he was not going to redeem his son. That in his own words, it was, his son was dead, their son was dead, but he still did it because of Leia. He was willing. Well, no, I'm going to take that back. He wasn't just willing to do it because of Leia, because he was willing to do it because he still actually loved his son, because Han genuinely cared about his son, and so. Yeah, it's one of those weird things. Again, great cinematography. It was very, very broadcast. Everyone could see Han's death coming. But that didn't detract from the horror of it, That didn't detract from the significance of the scene. At no point in time did I think any less of that death scene because of the fact that we all saw it coming. Damn it. The and the fact that after he has already been killed, after the fact that he's already been killed by his own son, he then reaches up and touches his hand, his head with his hand. That was just poetry right there. That symbol of, no, I still love you, I still care about you. And then he falls. Oh my God, that was just perfect. I'm sorry for using that word. And I already spoke about this, but just to rehash it because it was amazing. The light from outside casting the blue on the left side of Ren's face, or Kylo's face, and the light from the device casting the red onto the right side of his face. Oh, gotcha. No, I don't think that's... Whoa, crap. I'm dead. I don't think that's likely. Kamek, assuming you're referring to the Warhammer 40k stuff. And there's no redemption. There's no like Han's coming back, or there's no Han will be a Force spirit. No, Han's dead, and that had exactly the impact it should. Han is dead, and he's staying dead. And the fact that Leia felt that, knowing that she sent him to do that, oh my God. If this is a darker work, I could see Leia actually committing suicide over that little issue. But no, one of the other things I liked is that Ren was completely honest with Han. At least I believe he was. Everything he was saying, I was just like, oh no. Because everything was fitting in perfectly with what he was going through. The whole, there's something I have to do, but I'm afraid I don't have the power to do it. I please help me to do this, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that was really, really, really powerful. And again, I do feel like Han was not so foolish or stupid to not understand what was being done there, and he was just reaching out anyways. He was trying to reach his son despite it, holding on to that faint glimmer of hope. And the fact that they both grabbed the lightsaber, just, oh my God. Trying to think. There was something else I wanted to talk about in that scene. Oh yeah, the fact that afterwards, during the battle between him and Rey, I mean, first of all, the battle was perfect. There was literally just bam, 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 just pure raw, again, mess on Kylo's part, but also he was in pain, and he kept. Someone mentioned in the chat, he kept trying to bring out that pain in him to help him focus and concentrate because he was having trouble doing both, not just because he was wounded, but again because of the fact that he just lacks that skill in order to really project his power. No forms used, just which was pretty awesome. The significance of the fact that he just kept getting angrier and angrier and angrier during the course of the fight. The fact that I feel like the entire fight, Ren was trying to convince himself he did the right thing. You know what I mean? Like, the entire time, he was just like, okay, look, this is the right thing. I have done what is necessary. I have done this horrible thing. And let me say this. I personally think, call me weird, I think Kylo knows what he did was horrible and hates himself for doing it, but for whatever reason, he thinks it's necessary. Now, I hate to say that because Jason Solo, and some of you know what I mean by that. I really, really do not want another Jason in my Star Wars. But the parallel is very clearly there. There is a very distinct impression of this is what I have to do. This is what must be done. For whatever reason, there's something we don't know about. There's some layer to the Force or the setting or whatever that we are not aware of. That means he actually thinks there is some reason he has to delve so deeply into the dark side and to submerge himself into the dark side, or with Snoke in particular. And so he is willing to go through all this mess and do something he himself feels deplorable just to accomplish it, you know? And I do think that, absolutely. I very much think he was disgusted by what he did. I'm sorry, I am 100% convinced he hates himself for killing his father there. Especially after that, and even if he could, okay, if you pay attention to his face, the actor does a great job of this. If you pay attention to his face, after he first, kills Han, it looks like he just calms down just a little, like there's a little bit of peace there, and then Han reaches up and does this, and then the horror of what what Kylo did really goes all over his face, and it's just like, oh God. Oh God, what have I done? That's just there. And he can't rationalize it. He can't get rid of it. He can't lock away the nightmare of what he did. And I mention that because it is a very unique type of villain that does evil and knows they're doing evil and knows what they're doing is wrong and still feels like they have to do it. That's a very uncommon form of villainy. I feel like there was such a unique balance in Kylo Ren's character. This is why I want to talk about him last. His character was brilliantly written and brilliantly... I already talked about that, Nighton. Brilliantly written and brilliantly acted. Because he's the child playing at war, except he has all that power and he feels like there's this great responsibility or fate or destiny upon him, but he knows what he's doing is wrong and he hates himself for doing it, but he accepts it because he feels it's necessary, and there's odd degrees of compassion there, and yet at the same time, there's a tremendous amount of rage and disgust, and just all of it is all over the place with him. He's got a wide variety, a very wide variety of portrayal of spectrum to him, and I like that a lot. I very much wonder what the hell is up with Snoke. I hate to tie this back into Snoke, but I feel like there is something relevant about Snoke, which is why Kylo Ren is doing all of this. That there is some task or some purpose, or maybe this is I have to infiltrate the enemy kind of a situation, or something in order to try and fix the Force, basically. Fix the galaxy, fix the thing. Yeah, Snoke did specifically say this is his biggest test, knowing full well what was going to come, knowing full well what he was leading him into. So yeah, I would put down money that Snoke knew about Luke and Vader easily. Don't know how, but again, we know very little thing about Snoke. Snoke, I believe. I'm not sure about that though. What else? Trying to think if there's anything else I actually have to share about the movies. As usual, this is a discussion, and I've been watching your stuff as you go by, although a lot of people have been chatting. So if anybody has any other things, you can be like, hey, I'm totally listening if you want to, if there are any questions, any thoughts. You're gonna pull a Revan. I will say one thing. I don't think Kylo Ren will be redeemed. I think Kylo Ren will have been doing some horrible, horrible thing, specifically because he thinks it's necessary, and either he's wrong or he's just gone too far. Where do I rank it amongst the movies? I can't fairly do that yet because I've only seen this movie once, and I've seen the other movies a few trillion times, roughly. But I would say that it is definitely a damned good movie. So, I like a good redemption story, but I have to add that word to the front of it. I like a good redemption story. Actually, Wolf Dog, that wouldn't surprise me at all. And, well, you remember how we've talked several times about how the nature of the Force and how it keeps changing? One of the things we argued when we were talking about that is if the Force is necessary to the rest of the galaxy. Which sounds like a weird question, but if you think about it, maybe the absence of the Force would actually be a better thing for the galaxy than the presence of the Force, you know? And if that's true, then Luke may be right if he is taking Kreia's mindset on that one. Um, I could also point to the Star Cabal as another group that generally had that kind of mindset. Excuse me. Uh, I feel like I missed a question up there. Scrolling up, scrolling up. Um, oh, I agree, Liberated. I very much do think that Luke felt all of the events of the movie. In fact, I would put money on that. Whoops. There's no way he didn't. I mean, good God. Uh, I don't actually think that personally, Chatter. I think it was exactly how it should be. Yes, I have already talked about Hux and how he's just. Whew. Um, I think that a to be continued is exactly what it needed to be. Remember, and I hate to say this, but this is not just the beginning of a new era of Star Wars. This is the continuation of Star Wars as a franchise. It needed to have a to be continued. There needed to be the okay. There's going to be more kind of a feeling to it at the end there. There needed to be threads that were not tied up. You know what I mean? Um, I will also say that this movie, if we're going to do direct parallels, this movie did a lot more establishment than A New Hope did. Even though both did the same thing, but even though both of them have a lot of establishment, this one really fleshed out a lot of things more than A New Hope did. Do I think Kylo is insane? No. I think Kylo is a well, I've already explained what I think Kylo is, but I don't think there's insanity built in him, no. Yeah, so Max von Sydow's character, who I actually looked up his name at one point in time, and I forget it right now. Whoever he was, he knew about Luke and Luke's location, and he was a member of a group that was keeping the Force alive. I like that, actually, a lot. Um, I like the idea that the Force and the Jedi in general, after 30 years, have basically faded into the point of myth and legend, especially for normal people. I talked about that during the trailer as well, and so I liked the idea of one group of people who continue to be basically preaching, for lack of a better word, the Force, so that people can continue to remember it and know about it, which is what he was a part of, that Church of the Force or whatever. Um, I also, I obviously whoever he was, he knew some. There was some significance to his character we don't know. The fact that they took Max von Sydow and just killed him in 10 minutes is significant. I feel. I know that sounds weird, but it wouldn't surprise me if he shows up in some other works. Is all I'm trying to say about that, because he knew about Luke. He had the other fragment of the map for Luke's location. He knew about Kylo Ren's heritage. So I mean, yeah. Um, I don't know if it could be Bale, even though that would be a weirdness since Bale should theoretically be dead. But it's not necessarily dead. It's just I have to admit it is very very difficult for me to separate the EU from the AU. It is so automatic to think of the characters with regards to the EU because they've been so established by the EU. So much of Star Wars comes from the EU. And so it's like, well, it could be this. Oh wait, no, that doesn't, that's not relevant anymore. Um, actually, yeah, Caladrius, I could totally see that idea that the less Force users there are, the more powerful they are. Kind of an idea to help try and balance the scales, so to speak. Eh, let's not do that, Dakota. They already did that in the Yuzun Vong thing. The AU is the new stuff that contains parts of the EU, but mostly just the movies. The EU is everything else, for good and for bad. Um, what else? Well, like I said, the whole Rakatan thing is already established as being a part of the AU. So, yeah, Episode 7 is the AU. Let's just make that fundamentally clear. It is very likely the Episode 7 will never be a part of the EU because it kind of contradicts the EU. So, of course, it's funny because everyone's always been cherry picking the EU. We've all done this. We all take, okay, this is canon, this is canon, this is canon, this is canon, and these other things can go away. Uh, what else? Is there anything else? Let me just run through the movie really quick in my head. Make sure there's nothing I really missed. One of the things I really liked about Episode 7 was it felt very real. I know that sounds like an odd thing, but it really made me feel the impact and significance of the setting and the themes and the characters, um, especially since especially since that lack of reliance on the CGI thing. But more so than any of the prequels, I felt like this movie was actually happening as opposed to a movie I was watching. You know what I mean? Um, yeah, JJ will not be coming back for Episode 8. I don't have anything to add to it right now, Chatter. I do think it could work, yeah. There was a parallel to KOTOR, yeah, in addition to the Rakatan thing. What is BU? Oh. Episode 1 to 6 are a part of Episode 7, yes, Kamek. Episode 7, well, this is just speculation because we don't know, but Episode 7 seems to indicate that something that the Thrawn trilogy also did. In other words, you beat the big bad, but you didn't save the galaxy. That was one of the big themes of the Thrawn trilogy. Okay, you had the happily ever after, now what? And the fact that the fact that Episode 7 continues that same idea is logical. Revenge of the Return of the Jedi ended so on such a yay, we've totally won feeling, but that always felt, forgive me for saying this, wrong. It always felt off that they would have just won by taking down Palpatine. No, do you have any idea of the scale and the scope of the problem? So, anyways, the point being, no, I don't think it detracts from 1 through 6, Kamek. Um, I would believe that in a flashback, Wolf Dog. That's something that's entirely possible. What are my hopes for Episode 8? I want them to explain more. As weird as this sounds, I want more exposition. I want to understand more. I want more Snoke. I want more Hux. I want more Phasma. I also want to. Episode 8 would probably be the best possible time to finally pass the torch, basically, for Leia and Luke and whoever else is left to finally formally die, leading into the finale of the new era that Episode 7 is starting. It would not actually surprise me if Snoke actually dies in Episode 8. And in fact, that is something I'm predicting as of now. The idea that Kylo is actually going to be the villain of Episode 9. Yeah, I would like to see more of the Knights of Ren as well. Um, the movie fans wanted, but not the movie he would have made. I haven't even heard that comment, Umbral Magic. Um, that doesn't surprise me. Lucas doesn't seem to like making things the fans like. All things, all joking taken aside, though, that doesn't surprise me. Lucas probably does not actually like this movie that much. Uh, do I think 8 will deliver? Well, see, that's the biggest problem with Episode 7, in my opinion. Episode 7 was amazing, in my opinion. And I know I'm not alone in that, and that's important. I'm not saying if you dislike it, your opinion is invalid. Please don't mistake me for saying this. What I'm saying is Episode 7 was both critically and financially successful. Now, Episode 8 has to deliver on that. Episode 8 has to be just as good or better. We literally have a New Hope to Empire Strikes Back situation. A New Hope was a smash success that nobody really predicted would be a smash success. And then Empire had to be better in order to keep it going. And it was. Empire managed to take everything up to the next step. Yeah, exactly. It's the Empire Strikes Back gamble all over again. So Episode 8 literally needs to be the Empire Strikes Back to to Force Awakens. Otherwise, it's not going to deliver, and things are going to peter off again. So I feel really bad for the people working on Episode 8 because there is a lot of pressure there now. Do I think it will actually succeed? You know what? I'm going to give the safe prediction. It's the same exact prediction I gave about 7. I didn't think 7 would be a bad movie. I really didn't. I really did not think Episode 7 was going to be a bad movie, even before walking into it. And I was right. But I thought it was going to be an acceptable movie, and that's my prediction for Episode 8. It will be average. I agree with Plaka, by the way. I think that Rey and her powers and her usage in them is not a plot hole. It is very deliberately not discussed. And I think that's significant, and I think that's relevant. I think that it won't be Abrams. It's another team now, basically. I think, as weird as this sounds, I think they need to actually push the envelope further with Episode 8. They need to really shake up the status quo. So, I don't really think that qualifies as a cliffhanger ending, but I liked it. The movies should be able to stand by themselves. You're going to have to explain that one to me, Elastex. I can understand what you mean by that. I don't know anything about what Rogue One is going to be about, no. How does the movie tie into the Imperium? Believe I haven't even had time to think about that. I have a vague idea in the back of my mind, but to put it simply, if you just rearrange the timelines a little bit, this movie actually could be made to fit into the EU timeline quite well. All you'd have to do is remove a few aspects of the EU, like, say, I don't know, the Yuzun Vong, get rid of that, the legacy stuff, get rid of that, and just kind of slot this in around there. And it actually fits surprisingly well if you actually look at all the threads that connect it. But anyways. I think the little girl that was presented in that one scene was Rey, but that's just my assumption. I don't actually know. Well, most Star Wars movies do have a mostly new team, Mandartin. From A New Hope to Empire to Return was pretty much new people each time around. And from Episode 1 to Episode 2 to Episode 3 was pretty much new people each time around, too. So, I gotta be honest, if we see Chiss in Episode 8, I am going to have a fangasm. I'm not gonna lie about it. Oh, gotcha, Last XL. I understand now. I don't agree with the movie should stand on its own thing. I never have. It's pretty much the same reason I like continuity in general. If I wanted a standalone movie, I'd go watch a standalone movie. If I want to see a movie that is a part of a series, a part of a franchise, part of a story, I'll go see Star Wars, or I'll go see Lord of the Rings, or whatever. I disagree with that concept in general. I don't think you should just look at Return of the King and say that movie has to stand completely separate from everything else. I don't think you should be able to look at Empire Strikes Back and say that movie should have to stand against, blah, 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 blah. I don't agree with that mentality. Well, they had plenty of time to escape. I don't know why this escaping thing is such an issue. There was tons of time to escape. And they actually had the order to escape before the heroes were even done with their escape plan. So if the heroes had time to be rescued and then get off, you'd think that the people who actually own the base and have access to their own ships would have plenty of time to get off. I don't see why them escaping is such an issue. That's like the fifth time I've heard that asked. Why is that such an issue? Remember, there were several time jumps too in the directing there. There was the fight, and then there was the collapse, and then they were found by Chewie, and then they get on the ship, and several of these were cut. So there's a couple of minutes of time there where they could have that's just being passed out there. So I could see that survival. I could see that. It is also possible, I really hope this isn't true, that Rey is the person that the prophecy speaks of. I really, really hope that is not true. No, okay, the moment she said that, I love that it didn't even pass. Like, no, that ship's junk. I was like, oh, dude. I didn't say it out loud, but that was just what I was thinking. Um, I did not hear Obi-Wan or Yoda in the Rey Vision personally. I did hear the children crying. That was pretty obvious. And I did hear, most of the other apparent things, but I don't think I ever heard Yoda or Obi-Wan in that one. So, the poor First Order. Yeah, we're not going to talk about that. See, once again, I have such difficulty separating the EU because my first immediate thought was to start discussing the prophecy and how it relates to the balance of the Force, but most of that has been fleshed out in the EU. The movies themselves didn't really talk about the relevance or significance of the prophecy. In the EU, we know that prophecy goes all the way back to Tython. That's an old prophecy, but in the movies, it's just, and here's this prophecy, and we know nothing about it. It's always been implied by the movies, at least in my opinion, that the prophecy was actually started by the Sith, specifically as the trap. In fact, that is stated outright in the novelization of the movie, which I know isn't fully canon, but, Why do I think Finn could break it? Um, that's actually a really good question, but I think it's because of the fact that whoever died was a friend of Finn's, and that was just a moment for him. Also, keep in mind, and he mentioned this, Finn, that was his very first mission ever. Finn's first actual going out in the field mission. Um, and so he was sent out. The first thing he sees is another of his troopers die. And the next thing is he's told to murder a bunch of innocent people who are screaming. That would be a pretty good way to break some indoctrination right there. Excuse me. I will also say this. I really hope Finn has no force potential in him at all. I really want Finn to continue being the everyman. I want him to be the O'Brien of the new trilogy. I really, really do. I want him to be just a guy swept up into these events because I like that, and he portrays it so he's so human. I'm telling you, Finn is my favorite character in episode 7 by a huge, huge margin. He was just such a wonderfully human person, and it was great. Um, so yeah, uh, like Sheev. That's also true, as Bregman points out, and this is actually mentioned in the movie, although this is also part of the EU. When a stormtrooper or a clone breaks their indoctrination, they get reconditioned, and he was scheduled for reconditioning, and then he escaped. So it's entirely possible that under normal circumstances, like what I'm saying is this thing could probably happen more often than we think. But most other of these stormtroopers who break their conditioning don't have a convenient Rebel Alliance pilot here to help them escape. In other words, I think he got lucky. I think that it was just because of the fact that, oh God, here's this guy who can help me escape with the prisoner, was his big chance to get away. If not for that, he probably would have been just like every other stormtrooper who breaks conditioning and tossed right back into the pits, so to speak. So, uh, I don't think a Finn Ray romance needs to be a thing at all. Actually, there's no need for it. There's no relevance there. Some people I've heard talk about it like, oh, it's so obvious the romantic connection between the two, and I actually have to fundamentally disagree on that. She was basically the second human he ever connected with. actually had a personal interaction with. You know what I mean? The first was Poe. And it's obvious the immediate friendship and bromance, or whatever you want to call it, between those two was great. I love that. But then she was the very second person he interacted with and did lots of things with and went through lots of stuff with. So there does not need to be any romantic connection there because there is a very strong connection there regardless. Again, this is someone who has had no human connections in his life. No family, no friends, not in the sense we would call it. No nothing. So yeah, I mean, the connection there makes perfect sense to me. The Reapers. I don't know if it was him, Maz, but it was definitely one of his race. And yeah, the fact that she calls him friend was a nice touch and kisses him on the forehead. I really liked that. Uh, I there's just too much there to talk about Liberated. Everything about his expression, the grave, the planet, the obvious construction element of a place. I mean, for God's sakes, Luke goes to a planet where there's obvious signs of life that died away years ago, and so all that's left is the decaying and overgrown remnants of an ancient society. That is so blatant storytelling, so blatant visual storytelling, but it's so good. That's a weird thing about Abrams' style I've noticed in general. His directorial style tends to be very obvious, but still very well presented. So I really like that. I really like the fact that it takes him a moment to bring himself to look at her. Because there's no reason to delay that turn. The only reason for delay that turn was to show that Luke himself is still, even now, even having felt the death of trillions, because you can't tell me he didn't feel that. Even with everything that's happened, he still can't bring himself to turn and face her. And he can't even bring himself to reach out to her or do anything. And she reaches out the lightsaber, and he refuses to grab it, and lots of significance in that scene. Without a single bit of dialogue. Great, great stuff. Um, well, they mentioned okay. Han speculated. He literally said, "Those who know him close thinks he was going to search for the first Jedi temple." Whether that's true or not is debatable. And again, that could be Tython, because we know the KOTORs are canon in the AU. It could be, as I speculate, Rakata Prime, or whatever it's called, because it looks, very, very similar and would be relevant to that. And it could be someplace completely new. Who knows? Um, guys, we're arguing about something that's no. A lot of people died. Okay, it was genuinely horrifying. One of the things my sister also pointed out in the scene of them being destroyed, which was a nice subtle bit. I wish we'd known more about the black lady who comes to the forefront of that scene. I forgive me for calling her that, but I don't know her name or anything about her. Except everyone else there is like, oh my god, what are we gonna do? And she goes up there, her hands go limp, and her face just loses emotion. You can see just the sheer slack shock in her body language. She doesn't say a word, none of them do. But everyone else is like screaming, oh my god, look, this giant death thing's coming at us. And she's just there like, because she understands. There's just this comprehension on her face, and it just and then they all die, and then billions or trillions or quadrillions or whatever, a lot of people die. Oh my god, that scene. Uh the Even knowing it was coming survival from a long time away, it was still I will not try to pretend I did not cry when Han died. Yikes. Um yeah. It was not Coruscant. Hang on, if you give me a moment, I could actually look up what the name of the damn planet. They mention it once in the film. Uh, Give me just a second. Is this it? No. Hang on, hang on. Hosnian Prime is the name of the planet that was destroyed. Um, and 4 nearby moons. Hosnian Prime and 4 of the nearby moons. It is a core world. It is the capital of the New Republic, yada yada yada. That's where the Galactic Senate was through, yada yada yada. And that's basically all we know about it right now. But yeah, Hosnian Prime is the name of the world that was obliterated. Like I said, I knew it started with an H. As I mentioned before, it was actually originally supposed to be Coruscant, for reasons that are apparent, and Abrams was shot down on that idea. Pardon me. I have to be honest, it took me a little bit to realize it wasn't Coruscant. I was just like, oh my god. Um, wow. Yeah, Kay, it would be like as if the Yuzun Vong destroyed Chorus. Oh, wait. I will say this. While it is extremely likely that Rey is part of the bloodline of the Force, for lack of a better way to put it, either of the Solo side or the Skywalker side, doesn't matter. They're both coming from Anakin. That is extremely likely, but the more I think about it, the more I tend to ponder that maybe she shouldn't be. Maybe they should go in a different direction with that. Try to literally sever the ties of the old in a more, in a more good K, in a more literal fashion. It's funny you mentioned that, Bragon, because I know you know the EU, and one of the big points that was made a couple of times in the EU is why are we establishing the New Republic on Coruscant? And I mean, there's some pragmatic reasons to do so because so much of the galaxy already ties into that place, and there's so much of the infrastructure and bureaucracy still there, and most of the imperial bureaucracy actually just became the New Republic bureaucracy. But yeah, it was still one of those. Do we really want to do this things? And Luke was really against it too, if you'll remember. It's not that I don't like it, Last Exile. That is, in fact, exactly what I assumed automatically. I assumed she was Jaina Solo, equivalent, and he was Jason Solo, equivalent, just better because I don't hate him. Um, but I don't. I'm not sure if I like that idea better than the idea of her being unconnected to anything. She's just some kid. But I doubt that's true, especially because of the fact that they wouldn't have added the significance of her being abandoned on the planet, and they actually show a scene of that, of her actually as a child being left behind on Jakku. You don't do that on accident. The only reason to do that is to have there be some significance to her family. So there is some significance to her family. We just don't know what it is exactly yet. I was seeing a thread that was discussing Snoke, and it was actually funny to me because the entire thread about Snoke, there was an entire sub thing over here that was talking about how they were like, "Oh my God, guys, they've officially released Snoke's height, but it's about half a meter taller than Jar Jar, so clearly someone screwed up somewhere." Well, yeah, but I mean, they already chopped his nose off. Obviously, that's why he has the big scar on his forehead, and they were just talking about it as if he was Jar Jar the whole time. It was ridiculous. Um, Damn it, Kay. Also, with regards to the relationship thing, I point once again to Kiara Mundi as a great example of someone who. Anyways, um, I'm kind of out of things to talk about. Let me see. So I talked about that. There's so many little details. I don't actually want to do a rumination on this film because it's just going to be me pointing out something in every single scene. If it was legal, if I wasn't going to have copyright issues, I would totally just have the movie playing in the background here and be like, okay, look at this and look at that, and here's this thing, and there's the significance of this, and here's how awesome this is. But I can't do that, of course, because of copyright. So whatever. Let's see what else. So let me go there. Let me do that. There's that thing. I liked that section. The grappling hooks. I did actually talk about the grappling hooks. To summarize, they're awesome. Hugs, Bregman. actually, survival, no, I can't. Because of the way Copy Wrong is working right now. Not really, Wolf Dog. Because basically, the Palpatine of the AU is different from the Palpatine of the EU. And that's already true. The Palpatine of the AU, and this is already established, is someone who, after he died, left orders for the galaxy to be burned. He literally had a salt the earth order that several people of the Empire went rushed around to do. It was Project Cinder, is what it was called, and he had this big order to screw over the galaxy if he died. That is AU Palpatine, because EU Palpatine would never do that. EU Palpatine would try to figure out some way to recover from that loss, and did do exactly that. So, I don't. Yeah, no, I don't. It doesn't change my worldview about Palpatine at all, because it's a different character in every way that matters. Yeah, it was part of the tie-in, the series between Episode 6 and Episode 7. Because people are evil, Mandarton. Again, one of the big points behind the First Order is these are the people who actually genuinely thought that Tarkin had the right idea. And I specifically say Tarkin in that. That they were like, Tarkin was okay, but he just didn't go far enough. It really is the I can't think of the name of it all of a sudden. The Orwellian thing. I can't think of the name of the group in 1986 or 4. Now I can't think of the name of the book. I'm terrible. Whatever. Yeah, speaking of which, I'm curious how many records Episode 7 is going to break. I did see one thing that was actually funny. Avengers broke a lot of box office records. Avengers 2, made lots of money. There were a bunch of other movies that came out recently. They made a lot of money. Ingasok, that was actually what I was thinking of. Thank you, Kay. Engineered Socialing or whatever. Uh, the trailer for Episode 7 broke the internet for about a minute and a half. And when I say it broke the internet, I mean that pretty sincerely. Not a few sites went down or there was issues. No, no. The internet, the structure of the whole internet was kind of screwed up as a result of that trailer coming out. Episode 7 is going to break a lot of records, for good and for bad. Again, the amount of pressure on Episode 8, believe it or not, is actually more than was on Episode 7 now. And yeah. I will say one thing. One of the things that was spoiled for me, a violation of the no men rule before the movie came out, was several people were saying that we're looking at reviews, and those reviews said it was worse than Episode 1. Those people are on crack. I'm usually very, very tolerant of people's differing perspectives and opinions, but those people are on crack. Yeah, no joke, Dakota. Genuinely no joke on that one. Hey, Nosco, we're basically done, yeah. We're going to be, for those of you who are present, we're going to be starting up the tournament soon, the StarCraft tournament, so that's awesome. I don't know what professional critics claim, and I don't give a damn what professional critics claim. I am an unprofessional critic, even though this is my job, and I say it was freaking amazing. But that is, of course, just my opinion. If I was to say the biggest flaw of the movie would be it'd be the fact that its plot took a bit more of a backseat to the character development, although I don't think that is a flaw, I think that's a bonus. And the fact that in many cases the plot was written in a way basically to advance the characters of the theme. In other words, some things happen that can be explained, but were effectively plot holes. Those are my complaints about the movie. That's it. Those are my only complaints about the movie. It was a really, really good film, in my opinion. Um, I was blown away by how good it was. I really genuinely was. And you know what? If you don't agree with me, that's great. I'm totally okay with that. I really am. But I just like to say that I am very, very happy that the movie was so good. It's actually, it feels like it's a relief that the movie was so good for me. Um, because walking into it, like I said, I told you exactly what I was expecting. I was expecting it to be okay. Like on my usual scale of -10 to 10, I figured it'd be like a 1. You know, maybe about there. But oh my god, um, it depends on how they do it, Wolf Dog. The MCU started out doing it right, in my opinion, and then they started doing it wrong. And we'll see what the MCU keeps doing. Civil War looks to be on track to getting the MCU back where it should be. We'll see, but we'll see. I don't want to have anything else to add to that. Um, Kamek, don't over dramatize, dude. That's like me saying, guys, I'm just gonna stop streaming every time people talk about anime. I mean, come on, dude. Um, I thought there was another question that someone asked that I didn't respond to. Oh well. Thoughts on the Warcraft trailer? We didn't get one. Our theater didn't show a Warcraft trailer. It was weird. Like, we got, what do we get? We got oh dude, the sloth bunny animal, I forget what it was called. The new Pixar flick trailer was pretty awesome. Favorite scene? That was the question. I knew there was a question I missed. My favorite scene, gosh, that's hard. Han's death. Han's death was my favorite scene by far. It was so good. It was perfect. It was a perfect scene. Everything about it was absolutely perfect. And there were so many moments during that scene I thought, "Oh god, they're going to do it wrong." And they didn't. And "Oh god, they're going to do this wrong." And they didn't. There you go. That's the attitude I want right there, Kevik. Star Wars was freaking awesome. Come on, man. Hell yeah. Um but yeah, the so what do we see? We saw the new Star Trek trailer, which I've already commented on that. Blah, moving on. We saw the new Pixar flick trailer. What else was there? We actually saw like 8 trailers, but I can't remember most of them. Like I said, we had no Warcraft trailer, which was weird. What did we have? I can't remember. We didn't get a. I haven't seen that trailer yet, Kay. Hey, Pandemonium, welcome to the end here. Yeah, we had a we had a Kung Fu Panda trailer, which looked not my thing. Um, didn't have a Batman v Superman trailer. Didn't have a Jungle Book trailer. We did have the Apocalypse trailer. We did have that. We had the X-Men Apocalypse trailer. Oh yeah, and we had the new Harry Potter setting movie. That was a trailer which showed like nothing. We didn't have a Deadpool trailer. We had weird trailer selection. Um, you know what? Just for you, Kay. Link me, Kay. Give me a link to the trailer really quick. I'm going to chop this off for our YouTube viewers. So for those of you who have joined me at YouTube, thank you for joining me. Feel free to tell me how incredibly stupid I am in the comments below. I get it very often. And I will see you on YouTube at a later date.